Hey everyone, this is Rocky from WeLearnChess.com, and it's been a little while since my last video in this series on punishing early queen activity, but I got a game just now with a funky opening, and I haven't been playing too much over the past few weeks just because it's busy season for me at work, but I thought I'd post this video pretty quickly. Okay, so this was a 10-0 game, I believe, on chess.com, and I had the white pieces, and we got a king's pawn game, and then I saw this funky queen move here, right on move 2, queen e7. Some kind of, what's this called, the Gunderam defense. It scores very poorly for black when it's actually played. It's almost never played. So let's take a look. It's pretty similar to the McConnell defense. So in some of my previous videos, I looked at this queen f6 line, and there's some similarities here as well. All right, so let's go back to the game here. Okay, so yeah, one thing when you see kind of a funky opening, a funky move in the opening, and you're not sure what to do, sometimes I spend a lot of time trying to find a really good move to refute the idea, but then you can end up in time trouble. So if you're not sure, a lot of times developing naturally is usually okay, although you have to be aware of traps, because if your pieces are on squares that they're not usually on, sometimes there are ideas, especially with the queen, you have to be careful with checks. Like if you see a diagonals open where the queen could come out and potentially check. I'm having trouble drawing. Or for white, that's not the case here, but you just kind of have to watch for stuff that's funny like that. There's also sometimes tricks with bishops taking on these squares around the king, and then all of a sudden there's a queen check and you're dropping a piece, or you're dropping the piece back, but you're losing a pawn and you're displacing your king. That happens in a lot of openings. But anyway, I don't think just typical knight out, king bishop out can be really bad here. Okay, so yeah, d6. I guess he knows his opening. I can't really go too much into detail about whether that's the best move or not. But okay, let's keep going here. I'm just developing, trying to get a huge lead and develop to take advantage of this weird queen position. Okay, so he has to play some funny move here. Usually people play c6. Again, this is similar to this McConnell defense when the queen's on f6, but the idea is preventing a knight jump 20 squares, because that would hit the queen and also look at the weak c7 square, so that's why that move is played. Okay, so I remembered from my earlier videos that an early d4 is usually a good idea, and Stockfish does like this move. I think it likes castling better, but this is okay too. Okay, so he pins the knight. I just take here. I want to start opening up lines. Takes, and here I played the queen out to get out of the pin. I think the Stockfish liked better queen e2, temporarily staying in the pin, but the idea I think is to open the d file for the rook, so that if I castle long, for example, or even if I castle short and move the rook over, it's hard for him to just challenge this file, because there's probably a point in the game where he could have moved the rook over and challenged my queen, although that was only open for a moment. We'll look at a lot of fun lines where that actually wouldn't work. So okay, yeah, it looks like he's trying to castle long, so I wanted to try to do something to mess with this if I could. I played the bishop out. Note that I couldn't do this earlier when the queen was back here on d1, because he could have just taken on f3, and then he's hitting my queen and my bishop is undefended, so something like takes, queen takes, and then queen takes, and I'm dropping a piece. But that doesn't apply here, because if he takes on f3, he's not actually hitting my queen. Okay, so yeah, here probably he should have just developed this knight, which could have potentially given him another option to go over his king, and also it wouldn't open up this diagonal, which turns out to be really bad. f6 is almost never a move you want to play in the opening unless you are specifically playing something like if you're playing an f-pawn opening like a Dutch or something like that, you know what you're doing. Even then, it's pretty tough to deal with sometimes. Okay, so I just moved this back. I saw that he could open up this file, but I really didn't care, because I saw that I was going to castle long, and I just figured another open file couldn't hurt. The computer agrees after this. It just jumps up the evaluation another half a pawn. It's already at 1 point something for Stockfish, if I remember correctly. Okay, so here, yeah, I don't know if he should just try to castle already. I forget what the computer was saying with castling, but maybe he didn't like the looks of it, and he wanted to try to simplify some of my attacking pieces. Yeah, maybe he didn't like the idea of castling, and then I probably wouldn't have taken this pawn. Maybe he was worried about that. I'm not sure. But okay. Takes, and now castles, and I'm threatening mate in 1, so he's got to do something, and really the only thing to do is move the queen back. He can't run with this king ever because of this open diagonal. And now he's in some trouble because it's hard for him to develop his pieces. His queen e7 is blocking the development of his bishop. It's also blocking a square where his knight could go. The knight also doesn't have the classic f6 square because the pawn was put there. So that means the knight's going to have to do some kind of funky maneuvering, and it's going to cost him time, which he doesn't really have. So that's one other thing I've noticed about these early queen openings is like sometimes you don't have to like destroy him right away, but you can almost let him kind of mess himself up just because his development's so awkward. His pieces are going to be on weird squares and things like that. I didn't actually, up till here is probably okay that I've played. But here's where I start to make some mistakes. And even with some mistakes, the game is kind of a total crush. So it just shows you how bad this opening is. But okay, let's take a look. Because I haven't really done anything here I think that's too weird. I mean, except for a lot of people probably wouldn't like to double these pawns. But I wanted to be able to use files. So here, it's kind of a weak move. So my idea with this move is that I wanted to try to maybe move the knight out, but I didn't want to get forked. But this is where the lines start to get really interesting. I could have actually played knight a4 immediately, and the fork just doesn't work at all. I mean, I can take... I've seen this before in a different opening, and now, I mean, this is getting really bad because, I mean, okay, the king can try to run, but I'm coming in with my pieces here. So, like, if he goes here, then actually he probably has to, and I'm already winning the queen. So I wouldn't really have gotten forked there. And there's even some funky lines with just putting pieces on d5 or b5 in a lot of lines. I don't know if I remember to look at all of them, but I was looking at the computer and it's pretty cool. So a lot of times you can just leave a piece on prey because you want to get some checks in with the bishop or clear out a pawn that's blocking the checks. But what the computer really liked here was f4, and I think this is a point that like is probably really important in this. I guess I'll call it a lesson for myself because I'm basically figuring out my mistakes here with the help of the engines. But it's a mistake that I keep making pretty frequently. So I'm ahead in development. My king is safe, his isn't, and I wanted to attack. So what do I have to do? Open lines. So I didn't even consider f4, but it should have probably been the top move in my candidate moves. I mean, taking this probably is really bad for him because it just opens up more lines, potentially. Probably he would have to ignore it. But here we've got all kinds of stuff. I like a line given by the computer here, which I'm going to see if I can remember it. But queen h3, so just keeping an eye first on this tender square. Also, in some cases, if this rook ever tries to trade itself off and this back rank becomes weak, could also be looking at the c8 square. And then I can't even remember what... what black was supposed to play here. Like, maybe develop the knight. Let's just say, for example, he wants to try to trade a rook off. If I remember correctly, he can just play knight b5, which is really funny. If he takes it, then we're taking with check here. And we can swing the queen back, which is really nice. The king can't come out. He's going to get mated if he does it this way. Can use this rook here, and then wherever the king goes, then the queen comes back. And I thought that line was really awesome because the queen came over, went back, and then came over again and delivered mate. That would have been really fun, although I'm sure I wouldn't have seen the combination because I'm sure I wouldn't have seen knight b5. But this is not that you're going to see this Gunderam defense very much, but you might see it once or twice. You might also see the McConnell defense once or twice with the queen on f6, and you might also see some things like if you play the Scotch and you run into... There are some lines with the Scotch where in the opening, if you just get like a normal opening here, and you play the Scotch, and let's say, a Philidor here. We'll play a Philidor. Yeah, Scotch against the Philidor, that's right. And you get this line here where you can take, and then if he takes here, takes, here to hit this tender point. And then there's some forcing variations in this line. But in this line, you end up sometimes in some similar kinds of positions. And white sometimes does try to play like c6, for example, if he tries to block this mate threat with the queen. That's one line. There's some different lines with this, but again, like you could develop. And again, you're threatening these nasty ideas, and even worse right now because you've got pressure on this pawn, so he might play c6. And then you can see how he might get into a position where, you know, eventually b5 comes and you've got a decision to make where you want to retreat or you just want to sacrifice. And a lot of times in those lines, because you're so far ahead in development, in these lines, that usually sacrificing a piece there to get the check in is useful, but you have to, of course, calculate it. Okay, so let's go back to the game here where I didn't play f4. So doubled pawns, trade a piece, threaten mate, queen back, losing more time. And here, yeah, f4. So, yeah, another thing, I'm not sure what he could do. I mean, yeah, here if he tries to do this immediately ever, you have this check. So something like this, and you're up in exchange, and also you're still up. A ton of development. Eventually, probably the knight will be pinned. It'll be a while before he can get his pieces out, so that would be terrible. And I missed an opportunity to do this in the game, even with interest, because he put a piece here, if I remember right. Okay, so yeah, so he can't move the rook over at all. And again, this opens up. It's like sort of a clearance sacrifice, if you will, although probably you'd end up getting that pawn back if it ever came to you ever wanting to worry about a pawn. Probably black's going to get mated or destroyed in most of these lines anyway. Yeah, so I don't know what he could do. I guess maybe he could try to ignore it. Probably queen h3 anyway, just because, again, you're looking at these squares. If he ever tries to trade here, he's going to run into trouble. Yeah, here I'm not sure. Somewhere in here there was a idea of knight d5 with after takes and check, but I don't know if it's here actually. I'm kind of wondering if this knight idea is also still a move. Yeah, actually that would work because, yeah, if you do this here, takes check, and then we see the same pattern where we can come back over the queen. He can't go out here because we saw that's a mate. He can't go back this way. He can't go here. That means he's got to block with the queen, and then at the very least you have bishop c4, but it's probably the best actually, but who knows. So yeah, so even ignoring this is really tough here for black. It's hard for him to challenge these aggressive pieces that white has. So that would have been nice. Just I think that's a thematic point to remember here, is to open up lines when you're ahead in development and your king's safe and your opponent's is not. So I didn't take advantage of that, and I played this meek move, a bishop b3, which turns out to be totally unnecessary because, like I said, I could have played knight a4. And okay, but anyway, it's not like I'm losing the game here. But he did. There was a point here where he could have actually fought on a little bit better. Because, like I said, I've made some mistakes here too. Okay, so I just took the open file. I'm not sure if it's the best move, but yeah, it's reasonable. Probably still I could have thought about sacrifices. He's just trying to coordinate his pieces. You can see how long it's taking him. Again, this rook move over is never really quite working. He tries it here, I think, yeah. And here, I actually saw this after I moved, but I was a total idiot and just moved too fast. I was thinking of like where I could move my queen, and of course I had this idea of just taking, which we saw before would have won an exchange, but now it's just going to win a whole piece. So I could just take in here and done this at the very least, and this is even worse than before, obviously. But instead I moved the queen. So what did I do here? Queen c4. So just kind of keeping some threats, maybe trying to move the queen over to the dark squares to complement the bishop. Yeah, here he hits the queen, but I felt like he was really getting in trouble. Here I played an inaccurate move because he could have actually played the queen over here to threaten a trade, and I would have had to go back. So it would have made more sense to go to a5 immediately with the queen, which potentially pins this knight, because I've got the queen looking at this, the rook looking at this, and then you've got these bishop f7 ideas sometimes with checks, where you can kind of make the tactics work. So, but yeah, he was under a lot of pressure here. And okay, so I had my queen here on the wrong square, and here he made his own mistake, where he didn't challenge this queen and left it in enemy territory. He was looking at this pawn with this weakness that he had created. He still has trouble putting his king anywhere. He still has trouble getting his pieces out. It's going to be really hard for him to deal with all this in a timely manner. So I was rerouting my knight. That was the idea with going back, because I don't want to try to get into either this square or maybe this square, which is where I end up going in the game. Yeah, here I think the computer wanted to play g6 at some point with, I think it said equality for black, which is hilarious, but I think the idea is that he would be able to walk his king over, move the rook out, and then it actually might not be so easy to attack that because white's queen is all the way over here and black's king would end up sort of on the king side. And maybe some trades would happen. White does also have this structural deficit, but it's hard to imagine that that black would be able to survive. I mean, it is true that white will probably not be able to get the queen into the game very easily. It's not going to get trapped, I don't think, but like you would like to be able to do something like this, but look how long that's going to take, and right now you can't even go to the square anyway. So yeah, g6 would have been a nice try. It also would keep the knight out of these squares. So yeah, that was black's last chance. Instead, he played the bishop to e7, and yeah, this is actually just he's in a lot of trouble now. I mean, this pawn's under fire with check. I don't know, maybe he could have played the king over and just given up the pawn or something, but yeah, remember this bishop's sort of bearing down on his position too, so I can understand why he didn't really want to necessarily go over that way. It's hard for him to put his king here on the d file because I'm looking at that, and there's just really no good spot for his king. Now he tried to play g6, but there's a huge blunder because I'm going to get the check in, and there's this funky little windmill actually. This actually turns out to be mate in one. Really funny mate. Just everything covered here. Knight's got this square. So he had to go to f8, and I get like a funny windmill here where you can actually take the rook first. This is check, discovered check, and then after king here, then check here, and you're picking up the queen with interest. Of course, everything's also under attack. He's losing tons more material. Game's over. So that would have been fun. I did see that. I don't think I would have taken the rook. I probably just would have snatched the queen, immediately. But it is important to always look beforehand because sometimes you can pick up a whole lot of material. So I got a huge attack there. I didn't even have to sacrifice anything. I made at least a few mistakes where I almost let him back in the game. That would have been really frustrating. So I think lesson learned here was to try to remember to open up lines. So especially because I had a doubled pawn, that would have sometimes it reminds you if you have an extra pawn on a file, you can use usually just sacrifice one. So opening up lines not only vertically, but that was also opening up some horizontal, some lateral lines for the queen to move around. We saw that one nifty line with the queen going back and forth. That would have been a lot of fun to play. Also not being afraid to sacrifice material. When you're really ahead in development, sometimes you can look at moves that, like that forking position where I was worried about getting forked, but I didn't give it nearly enough thought. I've mentioned in some other videos, like there's some fried liver videos in that series that I'm doing there, where sometimes there's a fork on the other side of the board. And of course, I'd be playing the black pieces. But a lot of times it's not really a fork because you're so ahead in development that you still have an attack going. So you can move one of the pieces or sacrifice one of the pieces and still make it worth your while. So that would have been worth calculating, and I still had plenty of time on my clock to do that. So it was pretty lazy of me. But a lot of times that's my problem. I play it's a pretty lazy chess sometimes. Okay, well anyway, I thought that was a pretty fun video. I wanted to share it, and I hope you guys enjoyed that. I'll see you around.